Happy Tuesday, everybody. Welcome to another episode of China Update, where I provide you with the most up-to-date political, economic, and geostrategic analysis on the world's number 2 economy. My name is Tony. As you can see, this is not where I usually film. I'm currently filming early morning at an airport hotel. I'm traveling over the next 24 hours. There may not be a video tomorrow because I will be in the air for most of it. And for the next 2 weeks, I'll be traveling through mostly New Zealand, and so there'll probably be more locations like this. My apologies for the informal setting, and if the audio isn't too good, my apologies for that as well. But there is a lot to cover, so I wanted to get this episode out today. I've gotten up at 5 a.m. to make sure we can get this out before I fly. With that said, let's begin. The US has now entered the second Trump administration. To begin today, we cover some of the China-related actions and words made by the new president. We recall over the weekend, President Donald Trump spoke on the phone with General Secretary Xi Jinping, where they agreed to, quote, establish strategic communication channels and maintain regular contact on major issues of common concern. End quote. It was also reported that President Trump has expressed interest in traveling to China in his first 100 days in office. The TikTok law went into effect on Sunday, with Apple and Google removing the app from their app stores. After a few hours, however, services returned to Oracle, evidently after they decided that because Trump has indicated he wants the service restored, they are comfortable risking violating new US law. Over the weekend, President Trump suggested possible courses of action to keep the app alive in the US, none of which legal experts argue are viable under the current law. This is very much a wait-and-see scenario. On Sunday, Speaker Mike Johnson pushed back against the new president, telling US-based NBC News in an interview, quote, I think we will enforce the law. The law is very precise, and the only way to extend that is if there is an actual deal in the works. End quote. Adding, quote, I think President Trump is probably intrigued by all of this, and he likes to make deals, as you know. So we're very hopeful that that can happen, and that 270 million American people who enjoy the platform can enjoy it, but enjoy it safely, and not have their data being mined by our nation's enemy. End quote. Meanwhile, in his inauguration speech, President Trump only mentioned China twice, in the context of the Panama Canal. Quote, China is operating the Panama Canal, and we didn't give it to China. We gave it to Panama, and we're taking it back. End quote. President Trump has expressed concern over China's growing influence over the canal, citing its involvement in key infrastructure projects around the waterway. The canal, an essential international trade route, was handed to Panama in 1999 under a treaty ensuring its neutrality. However, Chinese companies like Hutchinson Whampoa operate key port terminals at both ends of the canal. This, Trump argues, poses a national security threat, as China's military laws could blur civilian and military roles. Despite this, Panama's government, led by President José Raúl Mulino, maintains that the canal remains under Panamanian control and is not influenced by foreign powers. US officials have questioned China's intentions, noting the strategic value of the canal, but others argue that Chinese operations are not a military threat. With the US being Panama's top investor and trading partner, the region's ties with China are viewed as a growing concern for American interests. And finally, and most importantly for China, in Trump's Day 1 executive orders, there was nothing about new tariffs in China, in spite of the campaign rhetoric. An unnamed person familiar with the decision reportedly told US-based Bloomberg, quote, the decision not to immediately target Beijing on Monday reflects a shift by the incoming president into a negotiating mode and an eagerness to cut another deal with Chinese President Xi Jinping, end quote. And as the US-based Wall Street Journal wrote on Monday morning, quote, Trump isn't expected to implement new tariffs on Monday, but he plans to issue a memo directing federal agencies to evaluate trade policies and economic relationships with China and North American neighbors. Federal agencies will be instructed to study trade policies and recommend actions to Trump, the advisor said. In addition to trade deficits, unfair trade practices, and currency manipulation, agencies will review policies on counterfeit goods and a tariff exemption for goods under $800, the advisor said, along with trade and tariff actions taken during Trump's first term. End quote. As veteran China analyst Bill Bishop observed today, quote, these studies will take months, giving the PRC perhaps more breathing room expected from economic pressure from the US. At least for much of 2025, as well as a window to try to negotiate some sort of broader deal with the Trump administration. End quote. Next up, foreign car brands have had a tough year in China's increasingly brutal market. In 2024, delivery volume for Audi dropped by 10.9%, and BMW's delivery volume declined 13.4%. For Porsche, the 28% decrease in delivery volume in 2024 was its third consecutive annual drop. Sales from Japanese car brands in China were also down significantly last year. Meanwhile, car sales from Chinese brands from last year jumped 23.1%, up 9.2% from a year prior. Volkswagen faced a tough 2024 too, with global deliveries falling 2.3% to 9.03 million vehicles, driven, no pun intended, by a 9.5% drop in China, its largest market. Intense competition in China's crowded auto market, which includes over 120 competitors, has sparked a price war, with steep discounts even on new models. Despite the challenging environment, Volkswagen avoided engaging in price wars, prioritizing profitability over volume. The company spokesperson noted the strategy, combined with new model launches, has begun yielding positive results, but cautioned that difficulties are expected to persist in 2025. Rivals BMW and Mercedes-Benz also reported struggles in the Chinese market, highlighting industry-wide pressures. Volkswagen's battery electric vehicle deliveries fell 3.4%, but the automaker remains a European market leader with a 21% share. The company aims to sell 4 million vehicles annually in China by 2030, leveraging next-generation plug-in hybrids and sustained global demand for its electric lineup. Meanwhile, China exported more than 1 million EVs in 2024, but between a price war at home and trade tensions abroad, the industry's future overseas is as unclear as the future for traditional automakers is in China. Next up, we have one more concerning development to cover, but just quickly, if you're enjoying today's episode of China Update, if you appreciate me getting up at 5 a.m. to get this out to you all, and you'd like to show your appreciation, I have a huge favor to ask. That is just to hit the like button and subscribe if you have not done so already. It's just 2 clicks of the mouse, but it's a huge help for the channel. It's very good for the algorithm. It's the only way in which the channel can be shown to new people, and I very much appreciate that assistance. For those who want to go the extra mile and help me keep China Update financially sustainable, the channel relies primarily on your support, subscriber support. Patreon and Buy Me a Coffee links are in the description below. Thank you so much, everybody, for the ongoing support. And finally for today, in recent days, China executed 2 men responsible for separate mass attacks that shocked the nation back in November. Fan Weiqiu, 62, deliberately drove his SUV into a group of people exercising outside a sports center in Zhuhai on the 11th of November. We covered the attack at the time. The attack killed 35 people and injured 43. Days later, on the 16th of November, Xu Jiajin, 21, stabbed 8 people to death and injured 17 at a college in Jiangsu province. Authorities say Xu, a former student, acted out of anger over academic failure and low wages. Fan's crime was linked to personal grievances, including a failed marriage and property disputes. The court described his motives as despicable and the consequences horrendous, sentencing him to death. Xu faced a similar sentence for intentional homicide. Both men were executed after swift trials, just over a month from arrest to execution, and neither appealed their sentences, officially that is. The mode of execution was not disclosed. In response to these attacks, authorities have tightened security measures nationwide and called for enhanced mental health resources to address the root causes of such crimes. Top officials have urged vigilance to prevent similar tragedies. While state media has played down these attacks as isolated incidents, public discourse has become increasingly concerned about the stress of widespread economic pain on society and the implications when it comes to increased violence. As China prepares for its annual Spring Festival celebrations, a time of massive internal travel and almost 2 weeks of time off work, Beijing, deeply aware of the rise in violent mass attacks in recent years, is keeping a nervous eye on security. China's internal security czar and Politburo member Chen Wenqing just went on an inspection tour to Shandong and Anhui, relatively poor regions, and focused on efforts to, quote, preserve social stability and public tranquility during the Spring Festival, end quote. As the economy continues to slow and pressure is put on an increasingly large sector of the population, the social and political pressure will continue to boil. Beijing's reaction, as it has always been, will be to tighten its grip. Okay, that is today's episode of China Update. Thank you everybody for watching. Please forgive the informal environment here. Hopefully the audio was okay as well. Like I said, there may not be an episode tomorrow, so I will either see you tomorrow or on Thursday.